In this video, I'm going to show you where I believe the Garden of Eden is located according to the Bible. On Google Earth, on the map you see before you, you see Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and then Iran over here in the corner. And I'm going to show you where I believe the Bible indicates the Garden of Eden would have to be located compared to modern geography as shown on Google Earth. Our first clue in the search for Eden comes from the Bible in the book of Amos, chapter 1, verse 5. It reads, "I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the plain of Avon, and him that holdeth the scepter of the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity in Kir, saith the Lord." So it would appear that those who hold the scepter of the house of Eden, in other words, the rulers or the heirs to the throne of Eden, would reside around Syria and Damascus, according to this verse. But let's continue. In Isaiah 37, verse 12, we read, "Have the gods of the nations delivered them which my fathers have destroyed, as Gozan and Haran and Rezeph and the children of Eden, which are in Telassar?" Telassar is a hill of Assyria, and Gozan is a river or an area where the captives from the 10 lost tribes were taken to. But of these location names, one we know for sure is Haran, and Haran is on southern Turkey, very, very close to the Syrian border. So it would appear, again, that we're close to the region of Syria. Also, if we look at this term Gozan, there's another verse in 2 Kings 17, verse 6, where it says, "In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away to Assyria and placed them in Halah and Habor by the river Gozan in the cities of the Medes." The Medes are southern Turkey, and the river Habor is a derivation of the name of the river Kibor. And the names of the river, there's two rivers in Iraq and Syria today that go by the name Kibor. So we'll take a look at those. Now here we see on Google Earth, here's the nation of Syria, outlined by my mouse cursor here. Turkey is to the north, and Iraq is to the east, and then Iran is further east from there. So if we look at Syria, you'll notice the Tigris-Euphrates river system. And as we follow my mouse cursor here, this is the Euphrates here. And then over here, this is the Tigris river system. So if we zoom in a little bit on this one river here that comes through eastern Syria, that is the Kibor River, which today is known as the Kibor River. However, there is another Kibor River, and that is located where Mount Judy is. If you look at my other video about Noah's Ark, this river here is known as the Little Kibor River that goes towards Mount Judy, which is right here. Okay, so we actually have two Kibor rivers, one in Syria and one in Iraq. Now what's interesting about this Kibor River is it's very close to a city named Zakko, in addition to being close to the city, the province of Sirnak for the city of Noah. And you can watch my video on Noah's Ark for more information about that, and Mount Judy. But Zakko traditionally was called the Jerusalem of Iraq or the Middle East, because outside of proper Jerusalem, because for many centuries it was the largest population of Jews outside of Jerusalem. However, persecution basically caused them to leave Zakko in the last century or so, and they all returned back to Israel. But at one time, Zakko was a huge population center for Jewish people. Also, additionally, there is a village located nearby which bears the name Haran. And Haran, Har is the Hebrew word for mountain, so it means one who hops along the mountains. And that's the name for one of the sons of Terah, a brother of Abraham. So there's a very good possibility that this may be the area where the 10 lost tribes were resettled. Or it's possible also that they were resettled somewhere over in this area here along the Kibor River. But this whole area here is part of Assyria. And so we see that the nation of Syria and this region here of northern Iraq seem to have some relations to do with Eden as it's listed in the Bible. Now we'll look at the account of Eden in the first few chapters of the Bible to narrow it down even further. But there's one thing I want to point out too. If you notice up here in the corner, in this Gulf of Turkey, near Cyprus, okay, if we zoom in, here's Turkey here. We'll zoom in here. This region is known as Adana, which may be a derivation of the term Eden, because it says that the garden was planted on the east of Eden. Okay, so if this region is Eden, then that would make sense that Syria would hold the scepter of the house of Eden, and that the garden will be placed on the east of Eden. Now in the Genesis account of the Garden of Eden, we read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, it says, "And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." The verse prior says that, "And the Lord planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he formed." So the garden is in the east of Eden. The next geographic example or a clue we're going to get is the rivers that flow out of Eden. Now, Eden doesn't necessarily mean the garden itself, because the garden is in the east of Eden. Eden can be an entire region, and the garden is located in or near it. Okay, so it says, "And a river went out of Eden," in verse 10, "a river went out of Eden to water the garden." So we see that the river originates in Eden, but it travels in order to water the garden. "And from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads." So this is kind of questionable. Did the river part into 4 heads from the garden, or did the river part from 4 heads from Eden, from whence it flowed out of? So that's an interesting question. So let's continue. In the first, in verse 11, it says, "The name of the first river is Pison, which that is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah where there is gold." So that means to encircle. Okay. And the second, it says, verse 12, it says, "And the gold of the land is good, and there's bdellium and onyx stone." And then in verse 13 it says, "And the name of the second river is Gihon, the same it is that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia." But the word in Hebrew there is Cush, so it doesn't necessarily mean Ethiopia and Africa, because Cush was one of the sons of Ham, and his kingdom, the start of his kingdom was Babel, Uruk, and Akkad, and Calneh, all in the land of Shinar. So that's not Ethiopia. So the land of Cush may be in the Middle East. Let's continue. And then it's in verse 14 it says, "And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, that is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria, and the fourth river is the Euphrates." Hiddekel is an ancient name for the Tigris River. So the Euphrates and the Tigris we know, but the question is, what is the Gihon River and what is the Pison River? And so based on those clues, let's take a look at what we can see. So here again is the Middle East with the Tigris-Euphrates river system here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the borders and the labels. And when I do that, I want you to notice when you look at the Tigris-Euphrates river system here, that we basically have 4 major rivers that flow out of Turkey. This one here, this one here, this one here, and this one here. They're all part of the Tigris-Euphrates system, but there's some major branches. So that being the case, these may be the 4 rivers that are being referred to that flow out of Eden in order to water the garden. So where would be the common watershed that would part ways to all these 4 tributary systems? Well, it turns out that they all have a common watershed in this region of Turkey, around here. And the name of this place, this particular region of Turkey, is called Diyarbakir. Okay, it's near a town called Mardin, and there's a shield volcano in that area called Karasa Dağ. This shield volcano is the watershed from whence the waters part in 4 different directions in order to go into those 4 river systems. So again, this is the Khyber River, this is the Baikal River, this is the Euphrates, and then this is the Tigris. And they all come from this region, this watershed, and part in 4 different directions. Now, each of the Tigris and Euphrates have different source headwaters, but as far as the watershed between those four tributaries, that comes from this region here. Now, if we look at the Wikipedia article about this mountain, Karasa Dağ, it says that it's a shield volcano located in eastern Turkey. It's also known as Mount Mazia, or Mazia, which in turn is used to give the title of an iris plant found on the mountain called Iris Mazia. But there's also an interesting discovery. The Max Planck Institute for Plant Breeding discovered that there's a genetically common ancestor for 68 contemporary types of cereal or wheats and so forth, grown as a wild plant on the slopes of Karasa Dağ, which strongly suggests that Karasa Dağ provided the site for the first domestication of einkorn wheat. So this would suggest this is the origin of where the domestication of a major form of wheat started, and that all these different genetic diverse branches of wheat all have trace a common ancestor back to this mountain. Again, a very good indicator that this is an origin of spreading out of plants, animals, etc. What's also interesting about this mountain is if we zoom in on it, we'll notice that this particular shield volcano, once you zoom in on the soil, it's a very bright reddish clay soil. Okay, and the name of Adam is a cognate with the word Edom in Hebrew, which means red. And the idea was he was taken out of red ground, red clay earth. And the name of the ground that he was taken out of is called Adamah, which again has a cognate with the term red. Even blood in Hebrew is called dam, which is because of its red color. So it's possible that this may be the very mound of creation, or the very earth from which Adam was taken out of and formed from the dust of the earth. So this whole region here, which is fertile in the midst of the mountains, might be considered the Garden of Eden, possibly. But it says that the waters flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there they were divided into four parts. So going back to our river system, the first river was named Pison, and it encompasses the whole, or encircles, the whole land of Havilah. Well, if we follow the Euphrates system here on this branch, and we go north, we notice it gets to this area here around Elizig, near Diyarbakir, or Karasa Dağ, and as the waters flow off that shield volcano in this direction towards this tributary, the area here where the river circles around, it encircles an area called Elizig, and that's an area very well known for gold and minerals and mining, and that was the indication in the book of Genesis, that it's an area known for gold and onyx stone and bdellium and things of that nature, which very much corresponds to this part of the river, which also encircles this region near this shield volcano of Karasa Dağ. The second river is the Gihon, which encompasses the whole land of Cush. Now the Bible says that the start of Cush's kingdom was Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh, all in the land, and Babel, all in the land of Shinar. So we have the city of Araka here, very nearby. So this may be the area of the region of the river of Cush. It's possible that could be this branch, or it's possible it could be this branch. But the ancient city of Haran is located right here. And you remember from our earlier verses, Haran is associated with the region of Eden. It's also the area where Abraham went to before he went to the land of Canaan. There is the other Haran that I mentioned earlier, which is more towards Sirnak in the city of Noah, but this traditionally is the city of Haran, where it's believed that Abraham went to. And it says that Abraham came out of Ur of the Chaldees, and just to the northwest, in the northwest corner here, is the city of Sanal Urfa, or Urfa, which many people believe to be Ur of the Chaldees, which is Abraham's home city. But it's possible that this river here might actually be the river Gihon, that goes through the land of Cush, because these names might have changed somewhat over time, but going back far enough in the Bible, it's possible that any of these rivers could have been somewhat interchanged, except for the Tigris and Euphrates. The third river is the Tigris. It still bears that name today, and it's the river that goes towards the east of Assyria, and it's still there. And then the fourth river listed that comes out of Eden to water the garden is the Pirath, which is the Euphrates itself, and that river means fruit. Now, it's possible that this is the Pison, and that this is the Gihon over here, and then of course the Tigris is over here, which would leave this one, the Baikal, being the Euphrates. So if that's the case, if that's the river of fruit, then it may be that this square area here, this plain, might be the actual garden that is the Garden of Eden, in which Haran sits in the middle of it. And so there's another reason why I believe this might be the Garden of Eden, and not only that, but it may possibly be the true location of Babylon. And I'll talk about that in another video. But irregardless, the point is that it's this area here, somewhere in here, that we find most likely the Garden of Eden. And I actually tend to believe it's probably this area here with the city of Haran in the middle. Part of the reason is because in the middle of Haran is an area that's known as the first university on the planet. It has that historical background. And there's a tower there that they use for astronomical observations, which is there today, that dates back to the Middle Ages, but it may have, or earlier, we're not sure, but it may even replace a older tower. And so it's possible that this may be the true location of Babel, as opposed to what they believe Babel is today in the center of Iraq. So this may have been the original Garden of Eden here, and the Tower of Babel later may be located there. But I'm going to talk about the Tower of Babel in a secondary video. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy more of these videos in the future. Thank you.